I keep going to this lady. She looks very attractive, so I don't know why I keep going back there. But anyway, any questions at all about homework assignment? And again, you are supposed to handwrite it, okay, instead of type it. And I also will give you a hint. As usual, I love to drop hints, but not giving you the answer, but hints are always, it's only good to the point of helping you to think further. So, the homework assignments asking for, I think we are applying the cost-benefit principle. That is a hint. If you're not getting it, wake up. Okay, I would like for you to show working. Does everybody know what working is? Versus a magic answer. A magic answer means the answer is $10. How? Where? Did the answer drop from heaven and then you just write $10? Or did you look to the right and left and copy from someone else? I would like for you to show working. For example, you would say, the benefit is such and such dollar, the cost is such and such dollar, economic surplus is benefit minus cost. Show the equation. The more detailed you are, the better. I hate simplified answer because this is a writing class. You need to write in sentence, not like, oh yeah, 10, that's it. Well, this is not multiple choice, so write it out clearly. So if we ask you to briefly explain, that's why I quit using the homework from the textbook because so to give the student the idea or just throw out the answer, that's it. You could guess, you could roll the dice and give the answer. But in order to understand it, you have to show us how you derive the answers, right? Okay, any questions at all? So when I walk in, that's when I collect it. Very good. And some of you might have done it already. Anybody? We've done it? Very good. You see, you will have benefited if you've done it because your memory of the first chapter is still fresh. Okay, next we want to continue where we started in the last class. And I hope some of you, most of you, I have mentioned to you that there is a correction on page 38 on that table. I hope you write it down. Okay, if not, this PowerPoint slides are available online. You could download it and then make the changes in your book. So I'm going to move on now. Again, what we talked about the other day is two kinds of advantages. One is called absolute advantage. The other one is, somebody help me out? Comparative advantage. What exactly is the difference between the two? Let's hear some of you explain it. Anybody? Yes.
Absolute advantage is the amount of time you'd spend, and then over another person with comparative is the opportunity cost you would spend over another person.
Okay, how would you look at the opportunity cost? What are you looking for in that opportunity cost? You're looking for a lower value of opportunity cost between the two persons in that same task. So, again, I don't see a student need for me to read this here, so I'm going to skip it until it surfaces later. And that is Maria, right? Okay, very good. Okay, here it is once again to remind you. So absolute advantage, you're looking at the absolute skills, amount of time that you spend. For example, I said Elias, not you today, so he said he could type very fast, maybe 80 words per minute. That's pretty fast, or higher than that. So if that's the case, if I can only type, say, 10 words per minute, so he has a absolute advantage over me because he can do a task faster. If you could run faster than me, which I'm sure most of you can swim faster than me, then you have an absolute advantage over me in swimming, in performing certain tasks. But when it comes to this comparative advantage, I'm not spelling it out right. Comparative advantage, you have to get into this thing called opportunity cost. And in fact, you look for the lower. a smaller value in opportunity cost. So again, the example, I'm not going back, but it is your responsibility after each class to review the material. So here it is, once again, a quick review. Everyone does best when each person, it could also apply to each country, concentrates on the activities for which his or her opportunity cost is lowest. So yeah, you could have absolute advantage in performing 2 tasks, but then when it comes to comparative advantage, it's different. Usually you only have comparative advantage in 1 task. What does US produce that other countries don't have? How about cowboy boots and cowboy hats? Yeah, we got comparative advantage in producing cowboy boots and hats. We ship it to Mexico. What do we get from Mexico? Come on.
Bananas?
Other than tacos, burritos, ponchos. Yeah, poncho sounds good. Does everybody know what ponchos is? This Mexican blanket. Oh yeah, they're wonderful. The colorful one. Yeah, well, yeah. U.S. may have absolute advantages in producing both products, but when it comes to comparative advantage, you only have 1. Okay, we've gone over that already. So we asked the questions here. We're gonna get some boys coming up, get you to read. Hopefully a different person. I like to hear different voices. So this class is not boring. Television and video cassette report. How many of you know what is video cassette still? You all still have it? This little one that you could push into a CD player. If the CD player still have this slot for it. Some cars have it. Older cars still have it. How many of you have it in your cars? You got old cars. Excuse me, yeah. Well, even my car, 2006 model, yeah, I still have the cassette player and CD player as well. They're slowly facing out. How many of you know 8 tracks? Yeah, wrong generation. This is predecessor of the cassette recorder. It's about this size. This is actual size, yeah. This is called 8 track. This is before the
Like floppy?
33 RPM. And then you have 45 RPM. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Some of you could like this. Sometimes they have this thing, they come back, and stuff from collectible items. So this is something that, it looks like a piece of, what's the best way to explain it? It looks like a giant-sized iPhone. That's probably the best way to explain it. That's the actual size. So that's predecessor of the video cassette. So anyway, in this example, we say TV and video cassette recorders once upon a time were developed and first produced in the US. And then we ask this question, what happened? Why? Why did US fail to retain its lead in this market? Okay, for that, I would like somebody to read page, mine is page 41, where you see the Economic Naturalist 2.2. So in your book will be page, is that 40? Help me out.
41.
Is that 41 also? Okay, could I get one person to read that Economic Naturalist 2.2? How about people on this side? I divide you into half. Taylor, you want to read it? Oh, yeah, you have a book? I'm sorry, yeah, you raise your hand. So go ahead. Tell me your first name.
AY.
AY. Go ahead, read it, please.
That televisions and CVRs were developed in the U.S. is explained in part by the country's comparative advantage and technological research, which in turn was supported by the country's outstanding system of higher education. Other contributing factors were high expenditures on the development of electronic components for the military and a culture that actively encourages entrepreneurship. As for the production of these products, America enjoyed an early advantage partly because the product designs were themselves evolving rapidly at first, which favored production facilities located in close proximity to the product designers. Early production techniques also relied intensively on skilled labor, which is abundant in the U.S. In time, however, products designs stabilized and many of the more complex manufacturing operations were automated. Both these changes gradually led to the greater reliance on relatively less skilled production workers, and at that point, factories located in high-wage countries like the U.S. could no longer compete with those located in low-wage areas overseas.
Okay, very good. Please bring your book to the class if you can. And you do need a book, believe it or not. Students who consistently do well in this class, they have a book. Please do not say, well, I just rely on PowerPoint. I don't think that will help because you have to dig deeper. PowerPoint is mostly for the instructor. It's not so much for you. It's for quick review before the test. But in order to understand the concept, you need to actually read the book. Okay, thank you for reading it. What? Yeah, you have to say the D. You have a D at the end. Yeah. U.S. has comparative advantage in technological research. Now, I talked about U.S. has, what are some of the famous schools that we have? Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Yale, UNCP. Yeah, why not? Line it up at the bottom. Okay, so because of the higher educational institution, especially graduate schools, we have some advantage in technological research. So now U.S. is also has a culture that encouraging the entrepreneurship. Who do we have that you could call entrepreneur?
Mark Cuban.
Who is that?
The
one who started Google?
Huh?
The one who started Google? No, different
I don't
guy.
think so. He owns a bunch of small companies. He's on Shark Tank. He owns the Dallas Mavericks, and he's just a big entrepreneur. Like material.
Okay. You think about people like Bill Gates. You think about people like Rockefeller and Rothschilds, and think about people like how about that lady? She's wonderful. What's her name? Oprah Winfrey. Yeah, she's considered an entrepreneur. Would you agree? Donald Trump, maybe? Yeah. Okay, a lot of creativity, a lot of entrepreneur. High expenditure on development of electronic components for military. Yes. This is U.S. comparative advantage. Outstanding system of higher education. And we talked about it already, that produce skilled labor, overtime product designs, produce cassette recorders and the TV became stabilized, and more complex manufacturing operation were automated. Use computer. So computers took over the labor, so then you rely more on skilled labor to operate the computer and less on less skilled labor, so over time U.S. cannot compete with other countries that has comparative advantage in hiring cheaper labor. So next I want to introduce a very important curve called PPC. It stands for Production Possibility Curve. This is your y-axis. This is your x-axis. Have I gone over this already? You read from bottom up, you read from left to right. So this is your horizontal axis. A lot of time we refer it as x-axis. And your vertical axis we refer as y-axis. Now, production possibility curve gives you the trade-off. For example, if you have $100, you could buy two things. Okay, you could buy hamburger or you could buy pizza, let's just say. So if you buy more hamburger, you buy less of pizza. Or you can spend all on hamburgers, zero pizza. Or you can do the other way. Spend all on pizza, zero on hamburger. So that's a combination there. A graph that describes a maximum amount of one good, notes the keyword maximum, that can be produced for every possible level of production of the other good. So we look at the example. This is just a definition. It should be in your book. The scarcity principle, we talked about it in the first class, that having more of one good generally means having less of another. We have a term for that. Starts with T. I mentioned it earlier. That is No, trade-off. Okay. Now, trade-off is very important. We talk about opportunity cost. When you come into this class today, you are making a sacrifice. You have opportunity cost. You don't have to come to this class. You could have dropped the class and taken another class. Yes, some of you decided to do that, and that's fine. Or you could be working at McDonald's frying hamburgers and earning your minimum wages. But you choose to be here today. So you make your decision because your marginal benefit of coming to class today is greater than your marginal cost. Make sense? Okay. Now we're gonna look at the. This is very strange. Okay, maybe that's what we have here. So typically in the, how many of you have taken ECN 1000? Nobody. Okay, that's fine. The classic example of your PPC, it's shaped like that. It bow out. And up here is, I think it's Guns and Roses. So are you for peace or are you for love? If you're for love, then all roses, 0 guns. Don't buy any guns. But if you're for war, not for peace or love, then basically you produce all guns, no roses. Right? That's what it means, this point A. And let's call this point D. What happened to B and C? B and C is kind of like in between. So combination. So up here maybe you have 100 units of guns, you have 200 units of roses, and up here you might have 90, and you might have say 100 and about half, 110, let's just say. So it's a trade-off. You have to give up 10 units of guns in order to produce. In this case, 110 units of roses. So these are called combinations. So down here you might have, say, 50, and you might have 180. So there's a trade-off. If you want to produce more of one good, from 110 to 180 roses, you have to give up about 40 units of guns between point B and C. So that's the idea. Now, believe it or not, this is called efficient. 5-star, this is a Hilton concept. And what that means is all this point A and B and C and D are on your PPC, your production possibility curve. They are considered efficient. Efficient means producing more of one good. In this case, roses, you have to give up some of the other good, which in this case is gun. So in that same spirit, we are going to give you an example. Okay, this is a small economy and you produce only 2 types of good. In this case, it's coffee or nuts. Okay, so we have only one worker to start off with, and this worker is a female. Her name is Susan. Remember this. The assumptions is important. She works 6 hours a day. Lucky her. You might say, yeah, 6 hours a day. So this is her PPC. It doesn't bow out because we're doing exact number here, okay? So later on you see the bow out one as this PPC gets bigger and bigger. So now we make it a straight line for you. So let's concentrate on this diagram, and you should be able to see it in the book as well on page 42, 43, somewhere there. So here it is. This is Susan's production possibility curve. So I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions to make sure you understand. So what it is given 6-hour workday, Susan's rate of picking coffee. How fast can she pick coffee? So if she were to do nothing but picking coffee all day, meaning within that 6 hours, she can produce 24 pounds per day. Everybody understand that extreme point A means nothing but producing coffee. No nuts at all. And the other extreme will be if she were to do nothing within that 6 hours but produce the other extreme, which is nut, she can produce 12 pounds per day. So which one is she past? in producing?
Coffee.
Coffee. Very good. You are with me. And then we got the in between B and C. B and C basically says, yeah, you could have combo. You know, when you go to McDonald's, you have combo. What's combo? Oh, yeah, you got hamburger, you got French fry, you got a drink. That's combo. So this is the same thing. Combo here means a combination of some coffee and some nuts. Okay, so here it is. Point B basically say you could produce 16 pounds of coffee, 4 pounds of nuts. Let me ask you a question. So if 24 pounds of coffee is consumed, it's produced in 6 hours, what's 16 hours of coffee? In this case, how many hours? Okay, let me give you a hint. Now, you see that 3 notch here, right? 24, 16, 8. And so take 24 divided by 3. Well, that's basically what happened. Yeah, you have 8 times 2, 16, and then times, again, 3, again, you got 24. Let's go back to this. I think I may have asked that question a little bit too soon. So Susan's rate of picking coffee is 24 pounds in 6 hours. And you could reduce it down to, so if you could produce 24 pounds in 6 hours, so how many pounds can you produce in 1 hour? You do division, not multiplication. Division means take 24 divided by 6, you have 4 pounds of coffee per hour. Likewise, 12 pounds of nuts. These are 2 different goods, please. In 6 hours, so 12 divided by 6, 2 pounds of nuts per hour. So if you look at it right away, as you answered correctly earlier, you look at it and say, okay, so yeah, Susan has absolute advantage in producing coffee. Because within that 6 hours, she could pick more coffee than nuts. Okay, so everybody got that? We established that Susan has absolute advantage. So now to understand point B and C. So what it is, all right, so you got 6 hours, right? So this is 1/3 of 24. 8 is 1/3 of 24 because divided by 3. 16 is 2/3 of 24. So therefore, 16 hours will be, 16 pounds of coffee will be how many hours? 4 hours, very good. Did everybody get that? Okay, so if it's 4 hours of coffee, how many hours are nuts? 4. Again, same thing. 4, 8, and 12. 4 is 1/3 of 12. 8 is 2/3 of 12. So that means this is 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. This is 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, right? So that means at point B, you're producing 16 pounds of coffee in 4 hours. And you're producing the remaining 4 pounds of nuts in 2 hours. Very good. Make sense? Okay, very good. I see most of you understand. What about C? Somebody tell me. How many hours? How many hours of coffee and nuts? Raise your hand. Yes, anybody? Yes, Ashraf?
Yeah, 2, isn't it?
Complete the sentence. 2 what?
2 hours she produced 8 coffee.
Complete the sentence. Use one sentence. Yeah. So what do you mean? So you got 8 and you got 8. So what does that mean? How many hours of coffee? How many hours of nuts?
Forget it.
Oh yeah, you could do it. See, this is 4 hours. This is 4 hours. That's 6 hours. So this one would be 2 hours. So 2 hours of coffee. And 4 hours of nuts because this is your 2/3. Everybody with me? So that's your combo. These 2 are the extreme. A and D are extreme, and B and C are kind of like the combo. Okay? Because you don't want if you have $100, you don't want to go out and buy only pizza, for example. You want a mixture. Don't spend all your $100. Lousy pizza. You heard people say that. I give you advice. Okay, next we have to answer that question. What is that question? Now that we know that Susan has absolute advantage in producing coffee, what about the comparative advantage? And when it comes to comparative advantage, we have to go one step further and calculate the opportunity cost. Yes. So we can't answer that question yet until we have the formula. Again, I gave you that formula before. So in this case, it has it up here, so I'm gonna write it down for you. This is Susan alone. The opportunity cost of producing nuts. Again, let's do this exercise because we ask you a question like that on your test next week. And again, like I say, sometimes I'm a little bit nice. I don't know why. The students remind me, I give you this equation, only this one. The marginal cost, marginal benefit, you have to know that. So the opportunity cost of producing nuts, you want your final answer in terms of the other good, which is coffee. So you want your final answer to be in coffee. This is how I look at it. So you know that if you have fraction, because gain something and lose something, get more of one, get less of the other. So therefore, coffee has to be in your numerator, because that's your final answer. In math, we do that. The other one have to be nuts at the bottom. And then what you do is you go back, you say, okay, if you have lose 24 pounds of coffee, but you gain 12 pounds of nuts. This gain and lose is not so important, it's the numbers, okay? You have to make sure that you put the right thing on the right place, on top or the bottom. So then you have 24 divided by 2, so 2 pounds of coffee. Okay, then you say, what about the opportunity cost of producing coffee? Again, you want your final answer to be in terms of nuts. So therefore, you have to do this fraction thing. And nuts is on top, because that's your final answer. Your coffee is at the bottom. Again, same thing, you have to give up 24 pounds of coffee, or you gain 24 pounds of coffee. Now, if you gain 24 pounds of coffee, it means you do nothing but picking coffee. That means you lose all the other 12 pounds of nuts. So 12 divided by 24 is?
1/2.
Half a pound of nuts. Which number is bigger? Excuse me, which number is smaller?
Enough.
Because that's the one that we want. We say lower opportunity cost. So check, check, check. So now be careful, because a lot of times students get the right answer and then they give the wrong conclusion. So that means that Susan has also has comparative advantage in producing
No.
coffee. Yes. Okay, in terms of nuts. So don't say nuts, because this is what you look at, the opportunity cost of coffee in terms of nuts. So yeah, so the lower number is half, and then comparative advantage in producing coffee, not nuts. Okay, so that's basically how you got it. Next, we want to define several points here, which you would also have it. See, this is also in your book, the equation, which will make it a lot more simple. But you have to come to class for me to give more examples. See, there's 2 equations there. And I think that's kind of like vague, because if I give more, I put in a number, you understand a little bit better. So at the bottom there, so there are 4 points that we're going to define next. So the first point is known as attainable point. Okay, if you look at bottom of page 43, attainable point. Could I get somebody to read? Anybody? About this side, would you read, Miss Kelly? Would you mind reading that definition at the bottom of page 43? Where's Miss Kelly? Oh, okay. You have the book, right? Would you read attainable point, unattainable point, like 2 of them? Yeah. Go ahead, please.
The both?
Yep.
Okay. Unattainable point, any combination of goods that can be produced using currently available resources. Unattainable point, any combination of goods that cannot be produced using currently available.
Okay, very good. Okay, so attainable point, basically this point that you could get to, which is A, B, C, D. And you know, also includes point E, because point E is inside the PPC, in the house. This one is outside the house, point F. Can we attain point F? No. So point F is known as unattainable. Unattainable means we cannot get to that point with our given resources. We only got 6 hours per day. But if you stretch, can you stretch your resources? Yes, absolutely. So if you stretch your resources, meaning if you're willing to work beyond that 6 hours, you could get to that point F. In fact, let's take a look. At point F, how many hours you have to work? So point F, you have 16 pounds of coffee, you have 8 pounds of nuts. So therefore, you work 4 hours on coffee, you work 4 hours on nuts. Right? 4 plus 4 is 8 hours. So you're stretching your resources by 2 hours, got it? Because 6 hours is your given resources. So if you want to attain point F, you have to work overtime, 2 more hours. So that's why it's called unattainable. It's outside the house. Now, what about point E? Could I get another person to read the next two, inefficient point and efficient point? If you have your book, raise your hand. This is your class participation. Yes. Did you raise your hand?
Yes, because I have my book.
You have your book, right? Or you can borrow it, that's fine. Just grab the one from somebody who sit right next to you, and that's good. We don't care, we just want to read, we just want to move on, yeah. So that would be Alex, right?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Inefficient point. Any combination of goods through which currently available resources enable an increase in the production of one good without a reduction in the other production of the other. Efficient point. Any combination of goods for which currently available resources do not allow an increase in the production of one good without a reduction in the production of the other.
Okay, see, that's why you need a book to go back if you get confused, like, whoa, what's that? Got your book? You know that old expression when you watch a cowboy movie, you say, have gun, boot trapper. This is like, have book, will A's in the class, yes. Okay, so now you got this, what she just read is efficient point and inefficient point. A while ago, I defined it, remember the gun and roses example, I say efficient points are the points that are on the PPC. Which are, name it, A, B, C, and D. What about point E? Point E is considered inefficient. Why? Because for point E, you don't have that feature of trade-off. What does it mean? Because at point E, look at this. Remember from point B to point C, just like Guns N' Roses example, you have to give up 8 units of coffee in order to gain that 4 additional coffee from point B to C of nuts. So there is this giving and let go of something. You gain something, but you let go of something. But point E is not like that. Look at point E. This is a troublemaker. From point E to point B, look what happened. Oh yeah, you could produce more coffee, but with the same amount of nuts. There's no trade-off there. What about from E to C? Okay, that means you could produce 8 pounds of coffee and 8 pounds of nuts. But you see, that has not changed the number of coffee that you produced before. You're not giving up anything. So for that reason, point E is considered inefficient. Whereas for people who are on A, B, C, and D, they all have this feature. If you want to gain more of the other, you must give up the other. So point E is one of its kind. It is attainable, but it is not efficient, yes. Now we introduce a second guy. His name is Tom. If we have a female, we have to have a guy. I don't know why, but this is how it works here. And let's look at him. This is his PPC, production possibility curve, and you see that it's just the reverse of Susan. What do I mean by that? He can produce 12 pounds of coffee, in 6 hours. And 24 pounds of nuts in 6 hours. So therefore, he has an absolute advantage in producing nuts. Very good. You got that. Now, what about comparative advantage? Do we know? No, we don't know. We have to calculate that OC, opportunity cost. But let's see what it is. So Tom's rate of picking nuts now is 24 pounds in 6 hours. So therefore, his rate is 4 pounds per hour. And his rate of picking coffee is slower than Susan. Just the opposite. 12 pounds of coffee, only 12 pounds of coffee in 6 hours versus Susan. So again, you divide it up, you boil it down to the per unit. So 2 pounds versus 4 pounds. So which one's faster? Obviously, nuts is faster. So he has the absolute advantage in producing nuts. Now, comparative advantage, we have to go one step further, remember that. Now, in fact, if you look at this graph, it's very similar to Susan's one. If you could just pick it up, oh, I wish I have that ruler with me. So this is like this, right? If you pick it up and flip it the other side, that will be Susan's graph that you saw earlier. Okay, so you got the number, same thing, we could go over the same thing, point B, C, D, these are all efficient point. Again, this is, point B will be 4 pounds of coffee, 2 pounds of nut. This will be 2 pounds of coffee, 2 hours of coffee and 4 hours of nuts. So yeah, don't get confused about the number of hours and the number of pounds. Okay, so here it is. We're calculating the opportunity cost of nuts now, and you should work on this yourself because I've done it example, so hopefully you learn how to do it now. It is better, so much better that if you do active learning in class instead of like passive, because I tell you it is scary when you sit in front of that computer, when you do your test, like you're thinking for the first time. Probably don't have a good chance of doing well, but if you're thinking now, it helps. Because you start asking questions now. What do you not understand? So the opportunity cost of nuts, again, now we're referring to Tom only. We're done with Susan. Okay, so then it will be, we want the answer again to be in terms of coffee. So again, same example here. So in this case, right, he would have to put coffee in your numerator, and that's only 12 pounds. So if you were to gain 24 pounds of nuts, you have to give up 12 pounds of coffee. So that now is half a pound. Likewise, you got the opportunity cost of producing coffee, you want it in terms of nuts. So it'll be the same thing, but this number will be changed. I guess we could do it quickly here. Yeah, so basically, these two numbers will be reversed, right? And these two numbers will be reversed like that. So then you have 2 pounds of nuts. Now all the products are the same except for the numbers. So then you have half a pound of coffee. So then the answer will be, okay, assuming that you know how to calculate, because you will do this on your test too. We have at least 2 questions like that. So you have to be sure that you know how to do it. So between these two, which one is a lower number? The one on top. So if the one on top is a lower number, then we say Tom has comparative advantage because this is lower opportunity cost in producing nuts, not coffee. So the answer is now this. So it looks like, similar to Susan, Tom has absolute advantage in producing nuts as well as absolute advantage in producing nuts. So that would be, the answer here would be, what would this be? Comparative, not absolute, because if you calculate the OC, we want to get the answer in comparative advantage. In producing nuts, not coffee. Is everybody okay with that? So when you read the book, right, a lot of time the books say concept check. this is like important, you know. You read the book, right? When you say concept checks, be sure you do this problem because it's a good one. The type of question I like to ask on the test tends to be go for this application, and a lot of these are in concept checks. Okay, now we merge the two graphs together. Susan's PPC and Tom's PPC together. You can see this graph also on page 45 on my book, somewhere around it. We got Christmas color. Green for Tom and red for Susan. So we have already declared or decided Susan has absolute competitive advantage in producing coffee, and Tom, on the other hand, has both absolute and competitive advantage in producing nuts. So now, if we were to merge the two together, see, because remember what I said, Tom one is lower here, more nuts, less coffee, Susan is the other way. So if you put two together, where they intersect there, that point, you can see it. Okay, let's ask a question then. Given a 6-hour workday, suppose Susan and Tom had divided their time, so each person's output consisted of half nuts and half coffee. How would she now produce each one of them? So this is a question that I put to you. Okay, which we are going to get into this important term called specialization. And we're going to look at two cases. Case one is without specialization. And we have Susan, we have Tom, we have coffee, we have nuts. Okay, so we're going to do a little paper here. And then case two is with specialization and trade. And remember, Mr. You mentioned that term, trade, the other day. Specialization in trade. Okay, so we're gonna look at the same. So, now, here's the next sets of graph that you will see. And now we give you that number. That is 8 and 8. Okay, so that means 8 pounds of nuts, 8 pounds of coffee. So we're going to answer that question that we asked earlier, which is this question here. Okay, they're still having 6 hours per week, but now, how would they divide up their time so that at the end of the day they produce exactly half nuts, half coffee? Well, we don't mean chopping the coffee nut into half. We do not mean chopping the nuts into half. We mean in terms of pounds. Okay, you will produce 50% of nuts, 50% of coffee. That's what it means. Okay, so if you look at that 8 and 8 here, okay. Again, going back, in this case, Susan's output would be 2 hours of picking coffee, 4 hours of picking nuts. Because remember, you have to go back to earlier, what we calculated before, because her rate is faster in picking coffee. She could pick 4 pounds per hour. So 4 times 2, you got 8 pounds. So the other 2 hours, you use it for picking nuts. 2 times 4 is 8. Because her rate of picking nuts is only, remember, 2 pounds per hour slower. So likewise, you do the same for Tom, but then these two numbers are reversing. So nevertheless, you get 8 pounds and 8 pounds there. So let's put this down here. 8 pounds of coffee, 8 pounds of nuts. Tom, 8 pounds of coffee, 8 pounds of nuts. So if you add this up together, what is the sum? So you have 16, and you have 16 here. If you add up the big grand total here, that's 32. Okay, so remember that number, 32. So what is it saying? Yes, we answer the question. Meaning that if we were to take the point where they intersect, and then, Susan would do 2 hours of coffee, 4 hours of nuts, that's 8 and 8. So that's 50-50. hey, we fulfill the requirement likewise here. So, but this is without trading, okay, without specialization, this is the best we could do. So there, assuming that Susan and Tom allocate their time, so each person output is half nuts and half coffee. Yes, we answer that, but is this the best? I think you know the answer. The answer is no. They could do better. How? Okay, they can do better if they specialize in the item in which they are good at. And then they trade. Wow. Let me ask you a question. If they were to specialize, what should Susan specialize in? I hope you yell out coffee. And what about Tom? Nuts, yes. Why don't we let them do that? And if Susan were to do nothing but pick coffee all day, she would produce 24 pounds. And if Tom were to do nothing but to pick nuts alone, he would produce? That's right. So there you have Susan, you have Tom, 24 pounds of coffee, 24 pounds of nut. This is nuts here. Okay. Now watch this. If they were to trade, they say, okay, I'll break it up into half, 12. I give 12 to Tom. And Tom also have 12, and Tom say, I give 12 nuts to Susan, 12 pounds of nuts, excuse me. And then Susan will give 12 pounds of coffee to Tom. Are they better off?
Yeah.
Yes. So then this table become, I'm not going to redraw this table, but this table should appear at the bottom here. This becomes 12 and 12, 12 and 12, right? And this becomes 24, 24, and this become what? 48. Yeah. How do they do that? They do that because they specialize in what they're good at. And then they trade. Wow, and suddenly you got 4 more pounds of coffee, 4 more pounds of nuts. There. How would that change if they can specialize in producing the good that each enjoy competitive advantage? And if they do that, which is what I just explained, Susan's competitive advantage in coffee, so she specializes in coffee, producing 24 pounds. Likewise with Tom, produced 24 pounds of nut. And Susan would give Tom 12 pounds of coffee for 12 pounds of nuts. Likewise for Tom. He would give Susan 12 pounds of nuts in exchange for that 12 pounds of coffee he just got. Wow. Wow. However, if you look at the graph here, 12 and 12 will push you outside the house. The 2 houses, the 2 PPC, or production possibility codes, the 2 lines, the red and the green line. So you're outside here, 12 and 12. So what does that say? What that is saying is that with specialization and trading, you could achieve what you could not attain before. And do better. Yes. We got 48 pounds instead of 32, right? So here it is, summarizing everything. This is a gist if you get nothing so far. That's why I tell my students, make sure you get the gist. If they exchange coffee and nut with one another, each can consume a combo of 2 goods that would have been unattainable. Yeah, we know 12 and 12 is outside their PPC, but it is attainable if they specialize in trade or exchange. Susan can give Tom 12 pounds of coffee in exchange for 12 pounds of nuts, You know the rest of the story. So, and this is better than if they were to produce each alone. Oh, Susan would try to pick nuts, but not so good. And Tom would try to pick coffee, but not so good. What's the point? And that's why we ship cowboy boots and hats and Microsoft to the rest of the world because we got competitive advantages in this stuff. So we get some other things from other countries that they have competitive advantages in. So let's look at this graph. So I hope, any questions on that so far? Okay, that should also be in your book. Be sure you understand the graph. But most important of all, be sure you understand how to calculate the opportunity cost. Because we'll ask you questions like that on the exam. And of course, so far you see me reiterating again and again the difference between the two types of advantages. So now we want to look at the bigger picture. Now remember earlier when the first time I drew that PPC, I said it's actually bow out, convex. It's not like a straight line. So here you see it now. Now, the reason that you saw a straight line, because that's easier to give example, and in a very small economy. But as the economy gets bigger, they produce millions of pounds of coffee and nuts. It bows out. The reason that it bows out like that, it's a curve now, it's not a straight line, it's because, I'm going to read you this and then we look at example, then we're going to come back to this. It's because the opportunity cost of producing nuts, an item, or it could be coffee, increases as the economy produces more of them. True or not? If you think about it, it does make sense. If you produce more, one good, hey, learning by doing, you cross a learning curve, you got this first mover advantage. You learn how to do it. Remember, well, look at Amazon.com. You weren't born yet. Were you born in the 90s? Internet came about 1993, 94, somewhere there. But Amazon came. The first 2 years of starting business, they were making a big loss. But that's common. If you start a business, you're making loss, don't quit. They hang on. Good thing they did. Third year, they started to make profit because they learned how to do they start all this kind of process, like one quick checkout and stuff like that, and they start this warehousing process. So anyway, okay, the opportunity cost of producing something increases as the economy produces more. Next, the gains from specialization grow larger. Yes. As the difference in opportunity cost increases. So that's the example we're going to demonstrate next. So in this graph, you see the same thing. Coffee is on the y-axis, nuts is on the x-axis, except the numbers are bigger number, 1,000 pounds, 1,000 pounds. Or we could say millions or billions. What I want to do is give you an example of the trade-off from point A to B to C and then to D and E. And then we're going to look at the number. Okay, so let's look at the first point between A and B. Now, between A and B, you have to give up 5 pounds of coffee because 100 minus 95, everybody with me? To gain, how many pounds of nut?
20.
20 pounds of nut. Okay. So your opportunity cost of producing nuts, again, is nuts has to be, so in this case, right, in terms of coffee, so coffee has to be on top of your fraction, giving up 5 to gain 20. 5 divided by 20, use your calculator if you have to, is 0.25, or a quarter in terms of fraction. Next, from B to C, we're keeping the number of coffee, the amount of coffee in terms of pounds that you have to give up the same, so it's easy to compare. So again, from B to C, you give up 5 more pounds. 95 to 90 is, the difference is 5 pounds of coffee. Okay, so there it is. The next one, BC, the opportunity cost of nuts, so you got 5. From B to C, you're gaining how many pounds of nuts? 10, not 30, please. Because from B to C, this is 30, this is 20, so you have to minus. Subtract the 30 minus 20 to get 10, because that's how much you gain. So 5 divided by 10, that's how you get the number here. You give up 5 pounds of coffee to gain that 10 additional pounds of nut. That's half. Finally, you see the shapes like that, oops, then it drops. So between D and E, you see that, oh yeah, you're still giving up 5 pounds of coffee from 20 to 15. You're now only gaining 2 pounds of nut. 77 and 75, so the age is 5 divided by 2, you got 2.5. The number gets bigger as you move from point A all the way to the end of this PPC from a quarter to half to 2.5. The opportunity cost gets bigger and bigger, and that's what it means. The gain from specialization grows larger as the difference in opportunity cost increases. Not only that, the opportunity cost of producing nuts, which is what we're calculating, increases as the economy produces more of them. So that explains why the PPC have an outward bow. Like you bow down. Some people say bow, but I say bow because like you bow out. Okay, next I'm going to cover this, the opportunity cost again, but there is this very famous expression, some of you have heard it, the low-hanging fruit principle. How many of you have heard that expression? Okay. It means the principle of increasing opportunity cost. So, well, let me give you an example, then you understand a little bit better. Well, let's just say you're producing apple, fresh, pick apple. So you have an apple tree and you're sitting right beside the apple tree. You set up a booth and you say, have a sign on the road, and say, come on in, freshly picked apple. And people start coming by and lining up to buy your apple. So the first maybe 10 or 20 apples you pick are very easy because you're sitting right next to your tree, all right? So all you have to do is reach. Pick the apple. Okay, put it on the table, and then someone come by and say how much it is per apple. You might say, oh yeah, so apple, so 25 cents per apple. Well, that's very good price, isn't it, today? If it is organic, you could charge $1, but never mind, just a typical apple. And then after about 20 apples, you look again, people come by again, they say, how about it? You look and say, whoops. Oh, they're higher. How do you get it? You have to spend more effort now. You say, wait a minute, let me go get some ladder. So, and you know that you don't have a ladder. You have to go to the neighbor's house and borrow it. The neighbor has a pit bull. Uh-oh. Oh, there's a problem. So you try to get to the neighbor's house and borrow it, but you got chased by the pit bull. You fell down, you hurt yourself. You have to call, cut a long story short, you have to call EMS. EMS came by and pick you up, take you to the, actually you got bitten by that fierce, ferocious people. Never mind, go to the hospital first, we'll charge a neighbor later. Okay, you go to the hospital and stitch you up, whatever, give you a shot, and you come back. Those people were still waiting. I say, what about the apples? You say, oh yeah. I got my ladder now. No sweat, that was just a small cut. And so you climb up the ladder, get this apple, gather it up, come down, put it here. You say, how much? How much do you think you would charge? Would you charge 25 cents?
No.
No way. How much would you charge? Let's see. Is that chiffon? Chiffon, how much would you charge at that point?
Probably $1.
Okay, $1 sounds reasonable or more sometimes. $1.50, let's say $1 for the sake of discussion. That's what it means, the low-hanging fruit principle. In expanding the production of any good, first employ those resources with the lowest opportunity cost, the one that you can reach and pick. And only afterward turn the resources with higher opportunity cost. Okay, so how do I expand it? A while ago we say you must reach this unattainable point. How do you do it? You do it by 2 ways. Number 1, increasing your productive resources. Hire more people. Go beyond Tom and Susan. Hire Harry, hire Mary. wherever you could get your hands on, and then your production possibility curve would expand, bows out. So by hiring more labor, more capital, or more technology, how would technology help? Someone tell me.
Increase efficiency.
Very good. Increase the efficiency. Yeah, you got the harvester. Forget about Susan and Tom, the manual labor. We got machine that can pick 10 times faster. How about it? So yes, technology, knowledge, education, training, coming up with new know-how, all this helps to expand that thing beyond your resources. So to expand your resources, population growth or increase in labor, hiring more labor, investment in new factories and equipment. Okay, basically that means you're ready to produce more. You got more capital. You got something, equipment that you could work with that makes your harvest a lot faster, make your picking a lot faster. So again, more education, you learn from specialization. Now that you have taken this economics class, I hope you learn to specialize and trade. How about countries like Nepal? How many of you watch Batman? The Dark Knight, I think that's the one. That was in the setting of Nepal, very cold, remember? We actually have a faculty from Nepal, by the way, in my department. Why have countries like Nepal been so slow to specialize? Because they have low population density, isolation. So there are some factors that affect certain countries from doing this specialization and trade. It could be communication, could be no internet, it could be very hard to get to in terms of transportation, or it could be laws and custom. Remember in the old days, China used to say we are the middle kingdom. We don't believe in trading with other people, so let's build the Great Wall, separate us from the rest of the world. Specialization is easier when population density passes a threshold. Now, if you look at countries like Scotland, they are also sparsely located, but then it's okay, they could do specialization because it's better transportation, better communication. You have satellite today, so the markets are somewhat connected, and you got good legal framework. That's very important to do trade because you want to make sure that if something goes wrong, you could settle it in a court, a legal system that's being recognized by both countries that you do trade with. And financial market enables startup. Okay, there's some financial market. I used to work in Singapore for 9 years. I remember internet started and the government came out and tell everybody, if you start an online business, start up. If you lose money the first year, we will cover that. Whoa, that's nice. They did. That's what encourages startup. How about too much specialization, like your hairstylist only cuts blonde hair? Wow. An expert in tropical disease opened a practice in the town of 500 people in Wisconsin. What's wrong with that? What's wrong? First of all, well, you tell me.
The specialization is useless there.
Yeah, wrong thing, right? Because who cares? It's a cold place. It's not tropical, so it doesn't help. It doesn't apply. 7 bookstores each open a different day of the week. You wouldn't like that with our bookstore if they say that. We only open on Monday. Oh, you have to wait the whole week to get to it. Okay. Now, so we talk about NAFTA. How many of you know what NAFTA is? North American Free Trade Agreement with Canada and Mexico. I think it was signed in early 90s. Oh yeah, you see the pictures of the president of Mexico here. They just, that's his face right there, page 55. I think it was signed during Reagan's time. So around early 90s, NAFTA was signed. And when NAFTA was signed, a lot of people protest. They say, no, we don't want Mexicans to come to America. They take away our job. Like blue jeans, that was one of the things, big things that was going on. Some people get hurt. The blue collar industry, like the jeans industry, textile industry got hurt because you're gonna outsource to Mexico. How many of you heard this term, outsource? Okay, more of you should hear that term, you're a business student. Outsourcing means you outsource it to other countries to do the work for you. Now, in China, you have HP plant, Hewlett Packard plants in China, and pharmacy, all this Merck, Johnson & Johnson, they have plants all over the world. They outsource to another country to produce it locally. Okay, so again, principles of this comparative advantage you gain by trading. So talking about NAFTA, so is it good to outsource? Is it good to specialize? Looking at the political context during that time, it was very much heated because people were against NAFTA. They say, oh no, it hurts the domestic industry. So they want this thing called protectionism. They say our government should protect our jobs. Do not let the Mexican take away our jobs, So there are two sides of it. People who lose their jobs are basically people who are in textile industry. And there's some other outsourcing. By the way, this is a hot topic in this class. If you want to do this topic, that's a good one to do. Okay, some of the service work that I perform overseas are medical transcription. I think India is one country that takes over that. Customer call centers, a lot of time you call up technical support is routed to countries like Philippines or not Latin American countries. Medical tourism, that's the kind of research I do that is to encourage people to go overseas to see doctors because they're cheaper. Technical writing, all these things that are information intensive, you could do outsourcing. Call centers, yeah, same thing. If you call an airline, a lot of the time it's routed to somewhere because they just follow the procedure. They could give you these sets of instructions at 24 hours, 24/7, whereas US, you can't do everything. This kind of thing you could outsource and save money. There are some limits to outsourcing, like, for example, what about quality control? Do you understand the language when you call up the call center? Do they understand your need? Do they really understand what you mean? Physical presence, haircut, you can't do outsourcing. You can say, I'd like to get my haircut in Sweden. Let's do it over the internet or teleconferencing. No way. I know some time ago I heard about you could test drive a car. This is about 10 years ago on the computer. I wonder how that is like. I think you will want to drive it on I-95 and see the wind blowing and your hair blowing everywhere. And that's when you get the kicks, Complex communication, understanding the nuances. So a lot of time people speak English, but then don't really understand what they mean. They don't really understand your underlying meaning. That's all this means. So there is a limit. So finally, my last statement, the greatest security for workers, all workers in the world actually, is the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. So the world is changing and we are getting into more globalization now. I think that's my last slide. Very good. So I'll see you on Thursday. I'll start a new chapter, and please don't forget your homework assignments. Don't type them. Use your handwriting. And bring your book and read the chapter in advance.